Hello there and welcome to this course on Pandas AI for data analysis. My name is Valentine and I'll be your instructor. In this course, we're going to follow the following structure. So we'll get started learning about the learning outcomes. After that, we'll talk about what is Pandas AI, what are those important concepts that we need to take into consideration. Then we'll get to learn about why should we work with Pandas AI, as well as who are the persons who would be much more suitable to use this to do in the working place. Other than that, after that, we'll go into a reading and a quiz, and this will entail going into a curated reading that we've prepared that talks a little bit more about what we will have covered earlier during the what, why, and who section of the workshops that's during this section. So we'll go in an in-depth way using a reading that will just ensure that you have some good theoretical understanding of the tool itself, that's Pandas AI. And the idea is that you go through this reading, then after that you will be required to go through this quiz that will just assess your understanding of those theoretical concepts. Once we've wrapped up on the theoretical aspects about Pandas AI, we will then go into our practice work, and this will entail going through some curated notebook that we have prepared, and it covers just different concepts using now again Pandas AI. We will provide examples as well as just challenges that will allow you to be able to put into practice what you will have actually learned about Pandas AI. The idea is that we are going to go through this notebook in an effort to practically put into use those theoretical concepts that we have learned a little bit earlier, and we'll get to use Pandas AI for just different performing just different tasks, whether it's say something like data filtering, how we can be able to do that, or even just performing data visualization, whether we want to create bar charts, pie charts, histogram, etc. We will also have challenges which will be more like exercises that you can use to just assess your understanding of those concepts that you'll have learned. And then we'll also have a solution notebook that will provide, that will just cover the challenges. It will just cover the solutions. It will provide you with solutions or sample solutions to just the different challenges that we will have provided. And the idea is that you can be able to feel confident enough in the solutions that you create. Once we finish that, the next thing that we're going to do is to go through now, no, not really us going through together, but us providing you a project that you can be able to cover. And in this particular project, you will get to work on a real life problem that will just help you to put into practice, again, those concepts, Pandas AI concepts for data analysis in a real world project. And we've provided a guiding notebook that just provides you with a template of how you can be, or some guidance of how you can be able to go through the entire project. And the idea is that by the end of it all, like by the end of this course, you should even have worked on a project that you can use to showcase to other employers, or you can also just use it to just evaluate to what extent you are able to have acquired this particular the skills that we're going to be covering. Lastly, we'll provide just a sample solution to the project itself, just as a way again of just assessing to what extent you're able to have covered what was required. So that's it. So that's generally the approach that we're going to be using in this course. Hopefully you are ready to get started, and let's get started. So starting off, by the end of today, we expected to have achieved these learning outcomes, be able to install and set up Pandas AI in your Python environment. This is more specific to now what we're going to be using is Google Colab, or just a notebook environment. Be able to create and manipulate Pandas data frames, which is the core, and work with what are called smart data frames, which are the core data structure in Pandas AI. be able to import, export data from various formats, be able to clean and prepare data for analysis using PandasAI, be able to perform data transformations and aggregations, be able to visualize data using PandasAI plotting capabilities, as well as be able to apply PandasAI to real-world data analysis tasks through the use of a project. So starting off, what is PandasAI? So PandasAI is just a Python library that we can use to perform data analysis, and it's an enhancement of the Pandas library, which is the standard for Python when it comes to performing data manipulation or data analysis tasks. PandasAI is generally more of like an enhanced version of Pandas, the library itself, that allows you to work with what are called generative AI features. So with PandasAI, you can be able to interact with the data that you're working with in a conversational manner. So for example, you could decide to ask PandasAI what is the average of the columns that you're working with, just through the use of natural language instead of knowing how to work with generally data itself or Python code itself. So with PandasAI, you do not necessarily need to know how to work with Pandas, the library itself, as well as to write code in relation to Pandas. Instead, PandasAI will perform that task creation, that code generation creation ability, and as a result, it will provide you with now the outputs that you desire. You can also be able to use PandasAI for drawing graphs, cleaning data, imputing missing values, as well as generate new features, which is part of feature engineering. So generally that is just a quick idea of what PandasAI entails. Just a library, an enhanced library that allows you to be able to just ask questions in a natural language manner and be able to get the desired outputs that you have. And at the very core, it just uses Pandas. So why is PandasAI important? It's important because it provides an interactive and an easier to use way that allows you to be able to get the results that you want. If you're not familiar with Pandas, how to write Pandas code or even Python, so you can just ask natural language, ask it questions using natural language, and it will just automatically generate the corresponding code that will help you have that desired answer. And it does that under the hood. You don't even get to see the code, not unless now you ask PandasAI to show you the code that it used to generate now the results that you wanted. Additionally, you are able to perform different types of tasks. There's a variability of tasks, so you can be able to perform data exploration, data analysis, visualization, cleaning, imputation, and also feature engineering tasks. So the idea here is that you are not really so much constrained on just data analysis, but you can be able to perform other tasks related to data analysis, such as data visualization. So how does PandasAI work? So generally how it works is that it uses generative AI model. So any generative AI model that you would want to use, if you want to use maybe OpenAI's GPT-4, GPT-3, or you could use Google Palm or Google Vertex AI, any sort of model that you want, you would simply define that particular model at the very beginning before working with PandasAI. So once you have defined that you want to use that specific generative AI model, then you ask a question. So you ask a question to PandasAI. You want to perform some analysis, maybe calculate the mean or median of the age variable in this data set. You can even ask it, kindly create it for me, but you just ask it, create it for me. And what it will do, it will use those generative AI models that you had defined, whether it's one model, and it will, the model itself will just generate Pandas code that allows you to get the desired result. And there are different kinds of large language models that are supported. The ones that we've listed here are just some of the ones that you can end up working with. who should use Pandas AI? So it's a good choice for anyone who wants to make their data analysis or manipulation workflow much more efficient. So if you maybe are a data analyst or data scientist who just wants to be able to quickly perform some analysis, and you can't remember maybe some Python code or you cannot really remember that code that helps you get to your desired outcome, then you can use Pandas AI to just generate the outcome as well as actually generate the code that you need for your analysis. In addition, if you're not familiar with possibly Pandas, but you also want to make use of it in your workflow, you can also use it just to make your workflow much more efficient. But one of the things that I would highly advise is at the same time, while you're going to be working on you're going to be using Pandas AI, it's always important to also verify. You can always request Pandas AI to give you the code that it's used to generate the results, and then you can verify whether that code actually does what it's intended for that particular purpose. So there are different concepts that you're going to be working with when it comes to Pandas AI. There's a smart data frame. So this is more like an enhanced version of the original traditional data frames that you're used to, the Pandas data frames. But now these smart data frames allow you to be able to pose natural language questions to now the data frame itself, and it provides you with answers that you need to learn about a data set that you're working with. A smart data lake is another concept or feature associated with Pandas AI, which generally allows you to represent some structured data or unstructured data in a form of a centralized repository. So if you have multiple data sets and you want to perform analysis on those multiple data sets, you can actually work with them all together in one particular repository using what is called a smart data lake. And again, so in such a situation, we would use a smart data frame when we want to combine multiple data sets. Charts, we'll get to see that we can be able to create various charts, though not extensive. Pandas AI allows you just to create basic charts. And there are what are called dependencies that you can be able to use. These are more like extensions, or you can think of it as extensions extensions to Pandas AI that allow you to be able to work with other libraries, maybe such as data visualization libraries like Seaborn or Matplotlib or Plotly. Then with just simply using Pandas AI, with those extensions, you're able to create just a variety of charts. You may not be able, at this particular point, Pandas AI is still under development, and you may not be able to get all the different types of complex visualizations that you might want, but you will get to be able to generate just the basic different charts that would come in handy during data analysis. There are what are called shortcuts, which would be just predefined commands or functions that we can use to quickly perform this common data analysis tasks. So for example, if you wanted to generate new features from a particular data set, then we can be able to just use a shortcut to be able to generate those new features, instead of just being able to, yes, you can still be able to pose to Pandas AI to create new features and then give you back the new data frame with new features. But again, you may just use just existing functions that allow you to do that in an efficient way. Optional dependencies, these are the ones that I've talked about. These are just more like extensions that allow you to take advantage of other libraries and extend the core functionality of Pandas. And again, Pandas AI is still under development. They're limited optional dependencies, but over time, as you get to use Pandas AI, and as Pandas AI continues to evolve, then they'll come in handy in whatever analysis that you would want to undertake. So these are just some steps that you would undertake when in working with Pandas AI. You just install the library, then you obtain an API key or from different large language model providers or generative AI model providers such as OpenAI. Then you set up just PandasAI, like importing the functions that allow you to create what are called a smart data frame. And also I'm setting up some just on configuration information. Then you create a smart data frame. Then you analyze your data with PandasAI. That's what we're going to be using. Lastly, there are limitations. When you're working with PandasAI, there are limitations. Just like how you work with generative AI models, again, you'll get to come across just different limitations. For example, in terms of inherent biases, if you are going to ask PandasAI to perform some analysis, maybe give you some recommendations based on some insights that it has figured out from just some data analysis on a data set that you have given it, it might end up being a bit biased, majorly because PandasAI relies on generative AI models, which again, just biased to a certain extent. So that is something to keep into account. Interpretation ambiguities. Sometimes you might write an instruction, and if it's not clear, or just that as a question, and if it's not clear, it could be misinterpreted by the generative AI model, and you get just different results. So it's important to take note of that. Limited functionality for large data sets. So if you're working with large data sets in the big data form, then PandasAI may not necessarily be the best tool for that. But again, PandasAI continues to evolve as new features are added to the actual library. Limited control over AI processing, so you may not be able to fine-tune your model, the model that's being used behind the scene for maybe the specific data sets. So that's a limitation. But again, as we look into the future, PandasAI continues to evolve, and maybe that is something that will be added in the future. Dependency on OpenAI API. So if this is just an example of one of the APIs that if you're going to be using, if you're going to be using something like OpenAI API, if it faults, maybe it goes down, you may not be able to perform your analysis as you would want. So PandasAI is as good as the model that's being used for analysis, for the generation of code behind the scenes. Explainability and transparency. Again, sometimes you may not know what happened behind the scenes. Yes, it gives you maybe a chart, but it doesn't give you the code that was used to create a chart, or some analysis, maybe some results, but it does not give you the actual code for that. Continuous learning and improvement. Again, this is something to note, that this is a library that still is in development, and over time there will be newer, different features that just enhance some of the aspects of PandasAI. So it's important to take into consideration that this tool is under development, and sometimes some of the limitations that we see might end up being not limitations at all. All right, so at this particular point, I would like to ask you to go through now the reading and the quiz, which we have provided. It should take you about 10 to 15 minutes. And once you have done that, then we can continue to the next step. So this is the reading that you're going to go through, and the quiz that you're going also to go through. Once you have gone through this reading and quiz, then we can go through now to the practice workbook. You can pause the video and continue once you're done. All right, so once we have completed working on the quiz, the next thing that we are going to go through is now the practice notebook that we've shared. So you can just simply visit that link and you should get into this page. You should read PandasAI for data analysis as well over here. I haven't updated it, but that's what you should read. And then we can get started. So starting off, the first thing that you need to do once you get to this particular page is to save a copy in Drive. So go to File, then Save a Copy in Drive. You should have your notebook that you can be able to perform data analysis with. So once you have finished that, the next thing that you need to do is to run the following cells inside the prerequisites. So we first need to install PandasAI. So that's what we do here, pip install PandasAI. The next thing is to, once we have installed it, is to install some dependencies that we would want to use, NumPy as well as Seaborn. So the idea is that PandasAI will also in turn be able to generate code in relation to NumPy and Seaborn that allows us to perform different tasks. So if you wanted to create a chart, it will just maybe a visualization, maybe something like just a sort of visualization, maybe a graph, a line graph. It might end up using Seaborn for that particular task, so you can be able to do that. Let's run that. So once we do that, we'll also need Pandas, the actual Pandas library, the Pandas library from data manipulation. And in addition to that, once we have installed, or we've also imported Pandas, we will also now need to import the smart data frame class from PandasAI. And this class will allow us to be able to write our natural languages to PandasAI and be able to just get just the results that we want. So let's just import those two. And lastly, as part of the prerequisites, we need to instantiate a desired the large language model that we want. So if we want to use OpenAI, this is how we are able to do that. We set aside our key. We set our key, the OpenAI key, a temperature and a seed. By the way, in order to set this up, you need to visit OpenAI in order to get a key. And once you visit OpenAI, you should be in a position to just set up your key. But initially, I think they require that I'm not sure. I think it's for you to be able to use, you should be able to set up an API key and be able to start using it immediately. But in some cases, they might require you to top up like $5 for you to be able to start using it. But if you figure this might be a bit difficult, you can also look out for just different other different large language models that might work. But for here, we're just using OpenAI, and we're setting the temperature to 0 and also seed to 26 to just be able to achieve determinism. So we want OpenAI anytime that PandasAI wants to maybe create some particular piece of, maybe it wants to perform a task, the generative AI model gives some answer, some code that is in terms of temperature deterministic. So that would mean code that looks much more closer to the training data. So it's not creative with its answer. We want code that actually does the task. We are not doing a creative task here. We are doing a task that already it's likely that has already been there's already existing code that performs that task. So we just want to use the code itself. We set seed to 26 so that we can set seed to 20 number 42 0, just to ensure that anyone who just is able to work with this particular code is able to replicate the responses that we are going to be getting from the model, and also in turn the answers. So run that as well. So starting off, importing data. So we'll start off by just working with how do we import data from CSV files and then get to use that particular data set with PandasAI. So working with CSV files. So starting off, we are just going to first of all load the data set that we would we have like we would with just pandas. So we say pd.read_csv, then we set the location, the URL location of our data set, and then we store that data set in this particular variable citiesdf, and then we now instantiate our smart data frame. This is where we are going to load this citiesdf variable data frame. So once we have loaded our data set into this variable, we call now this as a data frame. We call it a data frame. So we're going to load this data frame inside. We're going to create a smart data frame from the citiesdf data frame. And the idea here is that we should now be able, once we have created a smart data frame, we should now be able to interact with the smart data frame and just ask it just questions using natural language. So the first parameter inside this smart data frame object would be citiesdf, that's the original citiesdf, and then we say we also set the configuration. What LLM do you want to use? What language model do you want to use? Which is what we had set here. And that's generally it. And we store the outcome inside CitiesDF. And here, this is now an object, CitiesDF object. And then we use the chat method from this object, CitiesDF, Smart CitiesDF object, to be able to ask a question. So we want to return the number of cities in that data set, and that is stored in response, and then we print out the response. So if we run this, we should be able to get an answer, which is 213. Alternatively, we can load the data set locally. So if assuming that we had a data set that was stored locally, we can upload it by simply dragging the file here to this section, or just clicking this particular icon over here, and we should be able to choose the data set that we want. For instance, cities is the one that we have. So you can actually do the same thing. You can copy this particular link, copy it, Control-C, then paste it in a new tab at the very top, and then press enter, and it should download your data set, and you should see that it has okay, not there. It should download HTTPS dataset one. Yes, it should download, as you have seen here at the very top. So once you have done that, you can just upload it here or drag it here, and then ensure that the name of the file actually resembles what you have uploaded. And then we just the way we did here when we were setting the data frame, we just set the CSV name, and then we set the second parameter config value which is a dictionary that has a key value of the LLM. And then we just again create a smart data frame, and then we ask a question using the chat method, like, return the number of cities. In our case, we're expecting 213, and that's what we should expect as well. Lastly, if we wanted to see which code was used to generate a response that we had here, like which code was used to generate the number of cities, we can be able to use the last generated property, or attribute, which you see here, and this should give us we use it on the smart data frame, and it should give us the last generated code, the code that was used to generate this. So if you wanted to get the code for this, we would again run this, and then be able to run this particular file. You should get that particular response. So here what we have is just the code that was used. We have just some explanation. This is just a code. This is comment. This is just the comment that was used. It just explains what was used. But what really matters is this code. This is a function, count cities, cities, then len, and we were able to take in the fs, which is the data frame that we had initially, and then we just return the number of cities. So that's generally how you'd be able to work with that. So in addition, we can be able to also work with different files. So assuming we had a CSV file, we would use again pandas, and to use the read Excel function from pandas to be able to read the Excel file, then load it, and we in WinDF-ML, then we could windmill DF data frame, and then be able to paste it here. Actually, I have this. We could have actually just done this alternatively. This is just another way of just writing it. I had written it, but you could also just run it as shown, and you just use the chat method to be able to generate the response, and you should be able to now get the response that you had. This is still the same. If I undo that and I load this, I should be able to get the same response as I did. Lastly, we can also be able to work with Google Sheets using the dependency PandasAI Google Sheet dependency, which we can be able to install it as shown. And then inside, so it has already installed, inside the smart data frame object, we can be able to, while creating the object, we can be able to define the location, that's the URL, and then we have to just set it to LLM. We also have to set the configuration information. Remember to ensure that this particular sheet that you're going to be working with, you've set it to accessible, so that one can be able to access it. Not just you might set it and someone might not be able to access it. So this is the data set itself. Again, it's just the cities data set that we had initially. And I can be able now to just load it as shown and just use the chart method to do some analysis with it. And you can see we have 99 records. If I go to cities, okay, it's reading 99 records and I don't know. Okay, to be able to just see what was used to generate that code, we can use last code generated 222. It's df2. Let's run that. Okay, I think one would need to investigate this, but ideally the concept is that still the same. I think the same function that was used for that was also used for here. But yeah, one could investigate and see why you get 99 in such a situation. Does not give us we ask the cities, but we could even ask other questions, maybe records. If we ask records, we should also get a different number for that particular case. Let me just delete that for that particular case and see how many records we have here. Sometimes it takes a bit of some time for it to generate because the generative AI model has to create the code, then PandasAI has to check whether the code itself has any errors or not, and also whether it is the right code, because sometimes it could also just give you just code that may not necessarily work. Then once that happens, now you're able to execute. It's, PandasAI is able to execute using pandas, and it's able to give you all of that. But we're getting 99, not sure why that, but one could investigate further and be able to see what could be happening behind the scenes. But again, the beauty of working with PandasAI is that it gives you answers quickly, but you also have to verify, just like the way you'd verify generative AI. All right, so once we are done, the next thing that we need to do is now to go through the challenges. So go through the challenges and verify them with the solution notebook, and then we can continue from there. All right, so moving on, conversational data analysis. So we can be able to ask questions about data using just a smart data frame. So if we have a single data frame, then we can be able to ask data. We can be able to ask questions about data, that particular data frame. The same case if we have maybe multiple data frames, not necessarily related data frames, but could also be able to ask questions about multiple data frames within the same particular, using the same object, as we will get to see. That's where we use smart data lake. We can also be able to leverage the another feature called an agent. So PandasAI has what you call agents. They work more like smart data frames, only that agents also allow you to have some sort of history. So you can ask multiple questions. Still, smart data frames would also be able to do the same thing. And agents would also allow you to also have what are called just explanations. If you want just an explanation of how that answer was arrived at, then you can also be able to have that. Again, like smart data frames, we'll get to see also that we can have a chain of just commands or some questions which are tied to each other. We can ask follow-up questions again to PandasAI using still agents, but you could also do it with smart data frames as well. So let's do this. So starting off, ask questions about data in a single data frame. So we can first of all create a smart data frame of the data that we want. We set the configuration information. Then we also have these two other parameters that we can be able to set. So there's the name parameter and as well as description, and we can be able to use these to just be able to help our language, large language model be able to understand better what the data frame or the data that we're giving it is about. And then once we do that, we store that data inside Smart Cities DF. Then later we can be able to use the chat method to be able to pose a question, return the number of cities in the cities DF, and we can be able to print out our response. Up to 13. By the way, this particular case, I would actually highly recommend that you work with this method of just being able to load your data and then later onwards, rather than connect data to straight from maybe the Google Sheet, like the Google Sheet question that we had of how many records were in this particular this particular case. We did not get the actual records, the number, but if we use this method, we're able to get the actual number of records, which you can see here. They're 200, well, it's 214, but the header is not a record, which is the first one. So it's generally 213. Okay, so if we wanted to work with multiple data frames, what we can do is, first of all, we load the first data frame using Pandas, the second data frame. So we have cities DF and countries DF. And then we can be able to create a smart data lake and be able to set both data frames as shown. So we want to work with both data frames all at once. So whenever we're asking a question, we also want to have PandasAI ask this question in relation to both data frames. And then, we, display the response. If I run this, I want to return the average temperature for each country and the temperature, as you can see here. This is now the returned response, which we can do something else with. In addition, we can use agents. I had mentioned there are agents. So agents is a different class that we can use. We don't use now a smart data frame. Instead, we can be able to use an agent, and we load our data frame just like we did with a smart data frame inside the agent object. And when we are defining the agent object, so when we are creating it, so we just load it as the first one, then configuration information, then we use the agent chat method to also ask that particular question that we might have, and we would get the same answer, the number of cities in that. And we can be able to use agents. We can get explanations. So for instance, again, if I run this, I should be able to get, this is the number of cities. But if I want to get the code used to generate the last answer, so this particular answer, so you can just ask, you can get that particular code. So actually, cities agent, actually, a last code generated generally works for smart data frames. That's an error over there that I made. It normally works for smart data frames, but if you want an explanation, then we can be able to get an explanation from the agent. So this just works for the smart data frame. Let me just remove that. So this is the explanation. I analyzed the previous conversation and understood you wanted to know the number of cities. To find this information, I used the DFS variable, which contains the data, then counted the number of cities sorted, and it gives you just an explanation of how that was given. So that's just a way of being able to understand how you're able to arrive at your answer. Chain of commands, so you can be able to ask follow-up questions. So for example, if we wanted to follow up on maybe a result, so as initially we asked the agent, filter the top 3 cities with the highest temperature, it would give you the top 3 cities. Then we also want to get the cities of those 3 cities, which city had the lowest temperature, and we would want to return the city and temperature. That's how we can be able to do it. And just ensuring that you save your response initially in a response variable, any variable that you want, and then you apply the chat method to that variable. And you can also do this with also a smart data frame, and this is the response that we get. All right, work on the challenges and then verify your solutions with the solution notebook. The next thing that we can do, data pre-processing. So we can be able to prepare our data or just perform data cleaning generally using just, again, PandasAI. And the first thing that we will do is just load this data set that contains just some data, some employee data. We use the smart data frame. We create a smart data frame to be able to work with this data with PandasAI. That's what we have done. And then we can find missing values. So ask, PandasAI, how many missing values do we have for each column? And then it will give you now the actual missing values as shown. So we have some 2 missing values here. Then we can even ask it, we want to impute, we can even ask it. Imputing just means replacing the values that are missing with something. You can ask, determine the best imputation method for each column in the data set. Like for each column, what is the best imputation method for handling those missing values? And then we can ask it, and then it would tell us, for this employee ID, there are no missing values. Same case, there are no missing values. But when it comes to salary, mean, we use a mean, experience mean, and years at a company mean. So we provide using just mean imputation. Now we ask it to do that imputation for us, and then it gives us a response, and the response would be what we have here. And we would have actually read the data frame here. We would have displayed it when we wanted to. We could have asked it to just display for us that. And then we ask it how many missing values do we have now for each column, just to verify the missing columns. And we can see we don't have any, which is good. All right, at this particular point, we have actually we have only shown how we can be able to work with mean, but we can also check for duplicates. We can also check for outliers. But just for purposes of just learning, we have just done the mean, and you can always just ask those other questions for those other cases later. So at this point, work on the challenges, and then we can continue. So once you finished working on the challenges, data analysis work. So we might want to perform data filtering or grouping or sorting. So data filtering would be just to sort, to actually get the data that we want, filter for the data that we want. So let's say, for instance, we want to work with this iris data set. We create a smart data frame to work with, which is iris df, and then we can be able to ask PandasAI using the chat method to perform some filtering, return records with petal length greater than 5.0, and it would actually do that. These are petal length greater than 5.0, which you can see here. And alternatively, you could also ask it to, and it stored that in response variable. So the another question we could ask is filter records in the iris data frame with petal length greater than 5.0 and less than petal width less than 1.5. So if we run this, we should also be able to get that particular record. So we have records petal length greater than 5.0 and petal width less than 1.5. Grouping, so group the iris data frame. So we might perform grouping. Grouping is like creating summary tables. You might want to create summary tables based off larger data sets as shown. So group maybe iris data frame by species and calculate the average petal length for each group. So we can group the data by species and calculate the petal length. So this is what we will get. We grouped by the species column and got the petal length. This is the average for each and every species. We can also be able to ask it to maybe, we can ask it to group the data this way or to create that summary table this way. We can just tell it to just create a summary table using this method. Just asking, using this instruction, create a summary table of species and average sepal length. This is a different one, sepal length. But still this would also give us a similar kind of response. Lastly, we can be able to perform sorting. So assuming that we created another summary, maybe create a summary table of species and average sepal length, and then sort by species length in descending order. So we can do that the same thing. So we can do it in descending order. This is in descending order, or ask it in ascending order. So it will actually apply. We're using the response. We're applying this chart method to the response that we got here, and then we can just run that, and we can be able to just see that we have now our sorted data frame. That's it. Work on the challenges and verify your solution. Then we'll continue. Visualization. So moving on. So again, we're going to reload again the iris data frame and create our smart data frame that we're going to work with. Now, in order to work with visualizations, we usually need to prepare data. And we're going to just prepare just data by, say, creating summary tables for different use cases. So for example, if we want to create something, maybe create a summary table with the count of species in the data frame. So you can return a data frame containing the count of species. We run that, and we should be able to get some data that we can use to create, say, something like a bar chart. So from the response, we can still just ask it from using just the chart method. From this response, create a bar chart of the count species and label it appropriately. Count of species. So if we run that, we should be able to get now what we have. And again, you could always ask it to with specific questions. Maybe label have different colors or specific colors. Maybe label this color species differently than the other one over here. Maybe title differently. It depends with the prompt that you provide. And you can also use, again, the prompts as more like what we would do in prompt engineering. Like you could use one-shot prompting, giving it examples, or few shot, giving it several examples on how it should be able to do that, or create, maybe have a title in a particular format, etc. Pie chart. We're going to create a summary table with a count of species for the iris data from this, the one that we had created earlier. Then we create a pie chart by simply passing the relevant prompt to the chart method. And this is what we have. And again, we could always even just specify that this label needs to come on this other side, on this other side, etc. Right, histogram, the same case, assuming that we wanted to create a histogram. As a histogram, we would use it to display the distribution within one particular variable. So we can ask it, create a histogram to display the distribution of the SIPO width column and label the chart appropriately. So we do that, and we should be able to get this particular one. And we could always just even, again, provide a prompt, within the same prompt, say that we just want the back, we don't want the grid lines, etc. And we would get the code that, you would actually get the visualization that does that. Scatter plot, we can create a scatter plot of SIPO length and SIPO width column in the data frame. So two variables, create a scatter plot for that, and this is what we have. If you're going to be working with something to notice, that if you're going to be working with something like, you can also use another model. You can also use GPT-4 with vision, Turbo with GPT-4 Turbo with vision, which is also another course that we've created. And if you use that model, you can also feed in this particular image into that particular model, and it should be able to give you the analysis for that particular model. So it should analyze what you have here and give you some outcomes based on that particular analysis. But at the same alternatively, when you're generating something like tables, you could also ask if you create maybe this table that you see here, you could always ask for analysis of that. You could ask PandasAI to give you analysis of that. Moving on, line charts. We can also do the same thing. Ask PandasAI to create a line chart, but of course we need to ensure that the data that we are giving it is prepared for that. So the reason is because the reason why you'd want to ensure that the data is just in the right step is because generative AI models tend to work better when you have specified the approach that you want to use. Like we have different steps, so it will tend to just work better in such situations in terms of getting the answers for you. So in such a situation, always just ensure that you have good answers, or you have good solutions. You have good steps. You have made you made sure that you have just different steps that needs to be taken. Let's say, for example, we need to ensure that the data that we want to maybe visualize is actually the immediate data, not data that is not clean. So we need to have cleaned before we visualize. So otherwise, generative AI might just do its own thing. It might create code that may not necessarily work. So you need to just ensure that you're quite specific as possible. So let's load this new data set, gas data set. You can create a summary. So gas prices for UK, Japan, and US from 1990. So we want to create a line graph for that. So we use now this data, which it is like this, to create just a line chart for those countries. And we want UK and USA lines should be gray in that particular line chart. And we should be able to get that. But again, you see here in our case, our our prompt over here was not followed. One might, ask, but you could always just see how you can be able to go by that. Again, you can specify more your prompt clearly, and that you should be able to get. This is also a limitation. You might note sometimes your prompt may not necessarily yield what you want, but it gives you some reasonable results. Again, the reason why generative AI's models right now may not necessarily be at their very best, but of course in the near future with a lot of training, they should be a bit more specific in how they work. Box plot. We can also create a box plot for the SIPO length column. So if we wanted to create maybe to identify outliers, then we can be able to do that. Let's create a box plot for the SIPO length column, and we should be able to see this is what we have here. All right, at this particular point, work on the challenges and then verify your solution with the solution notebook, and then we can continue. All right, continuing, it's also important to note that while we have already gone through the charts, different charts that we've created, you may not be able to create all different kinds of charts at this particular time when we're recording this course. Maybe it could be because the reason would be the library itself does not support that. But of course, with time, more features that allow for advanced visualization aspects of data would come in handy. So just learn those are just the basic ones, and you might even sometimes have a hard time of just being able to generate maybe some simple plots depending on the kind of prompt that you use. So it's important to also be a bit more precise and also descriptive with the prompt. Well, not precise, but descriptive with the prompt that you're giving PandasAI. All right, lastly, feature engineering. Sometimes you might want to create new features from existing data sets, features that we don't know. So in this particular data set, IRIS-DF, we had our data set, but we were not sure. We have our data set, but we were not sure which features we wanted to create. Yes, you could ask using the chat method, PandasAI using the chat method, but we could use this shortcut, which is called generate features, and we can be able to get now a new data frame with now just some new features that we have. We have SIPO area as well as PATO LB area, which are just much more relevant to this particular case. But again, you could do some extra research, and maybe, for example, you could still ask you can still, first of all, before asking just PandasAI to generate new features, first of all, you could break this down further by simply asking the generative AI. You can even do it just separately by going maybe to ChatGPT or some other AI model and ask it, from these features, what other features can I create for my analysis? Then it will give you those other new features. And then you can, instead of using this shortcut, you can use the chat method and specify in your prompt you want PandasAI to create these new features and put them in the data set that you want, and then work with them from that particular bit. All right, at this particular point, work on the challenges, then verify your solution, then come back and we can continue. Now, you might have noted that so far we have gotten to go through just the basic aspects of PandasAI. And with experience, you will get to see that sometimes you can be able to work with PandasAI just as it is. You ask it a question, it gives you a response. Sometimes it might give you errors, but that is okay for now. It really depends on the large language model that is being used behind the scenes. And if you get an error, you could always simply change your prompt or do something to your prompt generally. Just change it so that you have another shot at having new code being generated. In addition, you will note that sometimes if I do maybe an analysis, if I wanted to redo maybe something like this to recreate this, it will recreate it fast. But the idea is that PandasAI by default uses a cache mechanism, so it stores this particular result, and you will always get this particular result for this particular prompt every time that you want this particular, every time that you want a new piece of result given So hack around, well, not even hack around, but when you are setting up your configuration information, if you visit the Pandas AI documentation, you'll be able to see that you can be able to set the cache parameter to false. That way, anytime that you run your code, you get fresh results. The only caveat is that it will take a bit of some time to be able to have those results generated, because I don't know, APIs nowadays, the LLM APIs, they're a bit more slow, especially the ones that we quite popular, like OpenAI's LLMs. But if you're going to be maybe running this locally, then it should be a bit easier. Maybe using some of maybe Llama or Hugging Face models, which may not necessarily depend on other factors. Then you should be good to go. So just to learn that the way you interact with Pandas AI might also be more like the way you interact with LLMs. All right, at this particular point, now we're going to go to our Pandas AI for data analysis project. The idea is that you're going to put into practice what you've learned so far, and go through this project. And there's a guiding notebook that we've provided. Use it to just help you to go through the entire project. Once you have done that, check your solution with your solution notebook, with the solution notebook that we've provided. And once you feel confident enough, and you can then continue in your learning journey of just how to just make your work efficient when it comes to just working with data analysis tools as well as newer technologies. Hopefully you're able to learn much, and you're able to acquire the learning outcomes that we had set out to work towards from the very, very, very beginning. And can't wait to see you in another course, in a future course. All the best in your learning journey, and see you next time.